All right, so welcome to the Ferra Film Podcast. Today I have Katherine on today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. You want to introduce yourself just in case some people don't know you?
Yes, so my name is Katherine Oostman. Hello, everyone in the world. And I am a writer slash director.
And if you haven't seen like The Lookout, I would definitely, and just looking at it, definitely it spoke to me honestly, like as a filmmaker. It's just like, oh, it was so good. I love
I'm so glad. Yeah, The Lookout is was my second film that I posted on YouTube, and so I was very nervous because there are trolls. We all know. But when
definitely.
you reached out, I was like, okay, there are some people in this world who are like just wonderful and like see what we're doing and get excited by it. And that made me very happy to see that there are people on the internet who are quite nice and lovely. And I'm like, ooh, we should do this more.
So what inspired you to make this short film?
What inspired us to make The Lookout? This is a good question. So it started. Let me like rewind here in my brain because it's been a minute. So I met Julian Terry, who you may know from some of his shorts on YouTube as well, through my manager. And he said that, I have this other client who's looking to make this film and he wants a female filmmaker at the head of it. Would you be interested in meeting with him? And of course, like if anyone walks in your door, it's like, hey, I want to collaborate with you. It's like an automatic yes, right? Because you're excited to see who it is and what their ideas are. And that's just part of the fun of filmmaking. So met with Julian. He had a very different concept. This had been something he wrote years and years ago, that had been sitting as a treatment, the feature version, for a long time. He had just been working on other projects and asked if I wanted to kind of take it, make it my own. So we spent almost a year doing that before we even got to the short, before we even made the short. And so that kind of was the like inspiration behind the short, is that it's actually a proof of concept. And so the short itself was kind of born from wanting to prove that we could build tension to a jump scare and prove that we understood how scares work, and kind of hint at some of the bigger pieces of the feature without giving too much away. So that was kind of the inspiration for the short, and the feature like kind of goes into more about the monster and the mythology of what that is and how it connects with this girl who's in the middle of the woods and why she became a lookout and all of these really cool elements that you see in the short.
So when was the moment you realized that you wanted to be a filmmaker from the very start? I know that's
You're coming with the hard questions, Zach. You're just like let me get
just gonna throw everything in.
down to it. Oh man. So actually I did not really, other than watching the extended version of the Lord of the Rings and all of the behind the scenes, hadn't really thought much about filmmaking until college. And I went in with a creative writing major because I loved writing love stories, and they happened to have a filmmaking major. And I remember I had some friends on campus. It was a small school. They had some friends on campus who were like, hey, we're making this film. Will you help us? We need a costume designer. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. And they drove me out. It was a night shoot. It was raining. It was like 40 degrees, 30 degrees in this house that was 100 years old and had no heat or electricity. And we're there throughout the night. And I'm like trying to figure out what period clothing go on this actress, because I had no concept of that, never done it before. And I just remember sitting there and it was like 4 a.m. and we're all quiet and huddled because they're doing a take. And I'm like, this is so cool. And most people would be like, can I please go home and get in my bed? And that's when I realized, okay, there's something to this. And I immediately added a filmmaking major, and the rest is history, as it were.
So how's this like compared to Lookout, compared to your other work? Like how's different between them?
Yeah, no, that's actually a really great question. I've been thinking about that kind of more and more recently. I found genre coming out of grad school because I realized I kind of was looking around at everyone's thesis, and the theses is what a weird word, from the year before, and noticing that like a lot of people chose to make drama, right? Because it's a short film. Like we had to make a 15-minute thesis, I believe, for our grad program. And a lot of people chose to do these really intense and emotional dramas, which were beautiful and visceral. I was not confident in myself that I could create something that would make you cry and identify with the characters in 15 minutes. And I was like, I want that emotional like charge, and I want to make something that makes people feel and get really engaged, but I don't, how you're like, I just met you, why should I be crying that you're dying or whatever? Like it's hard to grasp a character's intense emotional journey having just met them. It's very hard to do in a short, and we only see it successful maybe one time out of 100. So I was like, okay, what do I do? And a friend of mine was like, you should look into psychological thrillers because they have that range of performance that you're looking for, but they're a little bit more genre based. And so I started digging and I found like Birth with Nicole Kidman. If you've seen that, it's incredible. I watched It Follows, and kind of just like did the rounds of thriller horror that kind of also have a foot in drama, and was like, this is where we're at. And so I made a thesis that was kind of both of those things. And the beauty of that is that I think I had 13 minutes by the end of it. And I had a character who was in a situation that everyone could identify with. And then the character comes home for Christmas, right? And her mom is insisting that the stranger in her house is her sister and has always been her sister. So the whole short, she's trying to figure out who this person is and why her mother and everyone else in her circle believe that this person has always been there. And is she crazy? Is her mom crazy? Like, what is going on? And I found that audiences were able to immediately identify with that. And that was called The Stranger, which is also on YouTube, if anyone is interested in exploring that. And that was kind of my first step into genre. And it's much more relationship driven in its horror thriller aspects than The Lookout, which is much more your kind of standard build of creeping dread into a very visual jump scare. So that's kind of the difference between those two. And then I recently in February made a workplace comedy, which is totally different. And it's called The Little Things. And hopefully you guys will be able to see it soon. So I'm just trying. I love genre, but I'm trying to make sure that I constantly explore different tones because I think it will only make me better at what I do in the psychological thriller horror space.
Yeah, that's the same process like I'm doing. Like I want to like try every genre, like get my foot in every genre, like experiment, like you see, like yeah, definitely, yeah. I've been doing that.
It teaches you things, right? Like every time you get to discover something new, and yeah, it's more fun. It keeps you fresh and zesty, and I love it.
Like clicking onto the one thing and then it's like, oh, continue on moving to other things. It's like I love it, honestly.
Yeah, and I think I was noticing too that like if I had sat down and written like 3 or 4 horror shorts and made them back to back, and I was kind of like, I feel like I'm starting to get a little bit locked into what I think the structure should be and not being as creative as I probably could be. So yeah, I'm with you there. It's a good kind of departure.
Oh, definitely. So what gear you mostly use to make this the Lookout?
Yeah, the Lookout was shot on my Sony A7S, A7 II. Wait, now I've like got hold on, let me take that again because now I'm like, now I want to tell you the right thing. So I'm gonna look it up. Here we go. Google, let's go. Tell me the truth. A7 II. Yes. So we shot it on the A7 II we used the Ronin S to kind of get that little drifty feeling because otherwise we would have been handheld, which in the woods in the darkness just is not. It's a style, but it wasn't what we wanted, and you would have been like, "What are we looking at?" Because we were on the side of a mountain, and so we used that. We used my set of Rokinon Cine lenses, which are the like very base package version. They're nothing like fancy or special, but we had a good set of lenses that we could explore with. As you saw, the 14 millimeters in the short a couple times, which is really fun and really hard to make sure you're not in the shot when you're in a tiny little box of a lookout tower. Like it's the whole lookout tower. And then we had a KinoFlow and some other like LED based lights that could run off battery, or a small generator out there for my DP. And it was pretty like DIY. We had to keep our package light because, like I said, we had to climb up a mountain, and anything that we brought up into the Lookout had to either go up the like very steep stairs or be kind of pulled up with a pulley on the side of the Lookout tower itself. So we had to be very sort of economical with the gear that we brought with us. I'm plugging my computer. Sorry, I think it's about to die.
No, that's all right.
Yeah. What do you usually shoot your stuff on?
Well, I have the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, so I usually do that with my short films. So yeah, and
that's great. Yeah, I have a lot of friends who have that and absolutely love it.
Yeah, I love it. Plus, I have a lot of like Sigma lenses also. So like, yeah, so I've been mostly using that for my work.
Yeah, no, that's a great call.
So how many days was production for the Lookout?
The Lookout we shot it in 2 days. The first day was entirely, we say days, they were actually nights, obviously. That's the funny part about horror making. It's like no one tells you. They're like, oh, well, most of your stuff is in the dark, so if you're outside, guess what? You are never sleeping again. The first day of production was entirely the Lookout Tower itself. And we pretty much the second the sun went down, we're like, go. Because even though this was in April, it still was a little bit of the short days of winter left, and we needed every moment of darkness that we could muster. And then the second day was in the woods setting. That was our kind of second day. So anything with the monster and the tree trunk and all of that walking through the Erie Forest was day 2.
So how did you go about like getting this location for the short film?
The lookout tower. It's not like they grow on trees, is it? We found our tower via recreation.gov, which is basically kind of an Airbnb, but for camping grounds. So a good chunk of lookout towers are no longer in use just because of technology. They have other means to like look out for fires. They don't need a physical person there. That's not true necessarily so much in like Wyoming, Montana, and New Mexico. Those are still they still have quite a few lookouts that go up every season, which is awesome. And I would love to go shadow one someday. So maybe we'll get to do that. But yeah, recreation.gov has a lot of camping sites, and a lot of lookout towers that are no longer in use have been converted into camping sites where you can go. You can kind of reserve it for a night or 2 or 3 or 4, and you can camp there. So you could go there and just like spend a night if you wanted to. The way recreation.gov works is that they have a kind of like a time period when they open and allow people to book. So it's kind of like concert tickets. It's like, great, now it's available, and then everyone kind of rushes. And so we were planning to shoot more of like midsummer, and then what had happened, so once kind of the open enrollment for lookout tower bookings opened, we kind of were like, okay, quick, go online. And very quickly it booked up, and we had 2 options. One was in April, which was, I think if I remember correctly, like 2 weeks out from the day we were looking was when that shoot would have been, which we were ready, but we weren't like quite prepared to go and shoot a film. And then the other option was like in late October. And we're like, we don't want to wait that long. We would rather like have it ready to go. Okay, let's just do it. So we quickly scrambled and got together and went to the lookout tower. And so that was part of the process for the lookout tower, to find that location. It was in the Sequoia National Forest, both locations were, so we made sure to get permitting for that. And then the other problem that we had was in California, the like foliage you get kind of depends on your altitude, right? So like where the lookout tower was, we had all these nice like short little shrubbies, which wasn't really spooky. We're like, no, we need some like luscious trees, some like gritty pine trees. Let's go. So we ended up just like driving up and down the mountain and in all these like loopy side streets, trying to find the right set of trees that grew at the right altitude. And so we finally did find those kind of like off this side of a cliff near some like cabins that people rent out in the summer. So that was more of a physical like manhunt for these trees.
So what was the most challenging thing while making this short film?
I think the most challenging aspect was definitely post sound design, because we spent a very long time doing it, which is silly because it's a 6-minute short in some ways, but also we knew we really wanted to communicate a lot about the creature, especially in that moment when he climbs up over top of the lookout tower and you hear him on the roof. The feature kind of goes into more of like what this creature actually is, but it's not fully a spider. It's more of like this hybrid creature of nightmares that we've designed, which is very exciting. And hopefully we get to make the feature and you'll get to see it. But it has to have a lot of weight, and we wanted you to be able to hear that there are kind of like some clinks of claws on there, and that it just like has a lot of heft and dimension to it as it's climbing over the top, because we didn't have the time to like do a whole prosthesis for the final scare, and we needed to communicate more that it wasn't just like this like simple spider via that moment. So we spent a lot of time doing that, a lot of time building and creaking and swaying to the tower, because those towers actually do move. They're built to have flexibility because of how high they are and how much wind they have to withstand. And so just like we talked about like how we wanted the lookout tower to feel like it was a ship. Like even though she's up on a stationary platform, we want her to feel like she's constantly kind of in motion, and like her life is constantly uncertain in the soundscape. So we did a lot of layering, and Christina Gonzalez, who did the sound design, she's done a lot of Julian, who produced this, his short sound design as well. And she's so talented. And she was very patient with us when we're like, it's not quite right. Can we do this instead? And she's great. But it did take a very long time because we wanted to make sure it was right.
Advice for making a short film for people out here that's listening? I
would say the biggest thing that my friends and I, a lot of my friends are cooler than me and make amazing films that I wish I could make, the kind of people who make you jealous, but you love them, so you're not actually jealous. We've talked a lot about recently how there can be this crippling feeling about wanting to make something perfect, and wanting to make something like cinema. You want to make it really, really perfect and amazing and, high quality. And that is important, obviously, to continually better your polish and your filmmaking. But I think the best thing to do especially with a short film, is just go make something, go explore a different tone, go experiment with the scene idea. I think that's the best advice I could give, is just like get out of your own head and go make it, because the doing is worth almost more than the end product, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. I totally agree with that, honestly. Just like go out and like make stuff. I mean, I started off on iPhone, like just like recording my own short films. I mean, like now I just have my own gear now. I mean,
yeah, you could just go do it. And like if you wait too long, you start being like, can I actually make a movie? Like your head starts to spiral, and then you're just like, maybe I shouldn't, because it'll be bad. And it's like, oh guys, just go. It's gonna be great.
Go out.
And if it's bad, then good news, you can reshoot it.
Yeah, you can reshoot if you don't like it.
Yeah.
So why does it help like making a proof of concept to make, a feature film?
This is an interesting question, because I think the industry is changing a little bit. In the past 5 to 10 years, we were seeing, especially in the genre space, a lot of films kind of get picked up from a short film and then get made into a feature, right? You have like Lights Out, and a ton of other examples like that, where they've kind of been scooped up because they had a really interesting concept in the short that production companies and studios were like, yes, let's make that. And so I think a lot of us who love the genre and love making shorts were just like, great, like that's our way in, let's do it. And so we all kind of started making shorts and preparing treatments or scripts to go along with them, so that we could be ready if someone knocked on our door and was like, hi, I have $10 million, you want to go make this movie, or $5 million or $1 million or whatever. And unfortunately, I think we were seeing this taper off before the pandemic, but also now the industry has shifted so much due to COVID-19 that we're kind of still unsure how movies are going to be acquired going forward. Like, what's that going to look like? So I don't know that that's necessarily the solution now. Obviously, that was something we were hoping for when we made The Lookout. It may not be the case. It may be the case. That would be great. But I think that was the original intention, was saying, okay, let us prove to you with this short that we know how to build a scare. So we know the mechanics of the genre, and that we can build an intriguing concept. And then when you are intrigued for more, let us hand you this stack of a pitch deck and a treatment and a script or whatever, and you can see what the rest of this looks like and decide if we're, worth hiring to make it. So I think that was the original intention. And usually the intention with a proof of concept is just to prove that you can handle the mechanics, the tone, that you are capable of delivering this thing that you say you're capable of delivering.
No, yeah, I would say like that. I definitely agree with that. Honestly, if like for your short film, honestly, like I had like so many questions, like, oh, what's this creature, like the history of the, like, you know what I mean, like.
So glad.
Just a lot.
You did a job.
There's a lot of questions like pinging in my head while seeing the short film. I'm like, oh, the creature, and then the girl also. I mean, like I could definitely see this becoming a feature, honestly.
Oh, thank you. I really hope we do, because I can't talk about the feature, but I really it's been a labor of love, and like there's so much in it, and it's like it's the best of both worlds, right? You have some jump scares, and you have some very spooky wood stuff, but you also have like a lot of great character like conflict. And awesome. Hopefully we'll get to do that. But yeah, I think that's proof of concepts are also a great thing to do, kind of like what we were talking about before, is just like proving to yourself that you're like, great, can I make a dark comedy? Don't know. Let's write a short script and make a quote unquote proof of concept for it to see if I can try it. It's kind of that, right? It's like you're just trying to prove that concept works.
Yeah, you're just trying to prove your idea, and like it visually shows like what you can accomplish, and what the viewer like say like, oh, like this idea, let's pick it up, and it's
exactly. Yeah, I'm a fan of them. I just think maybe the buying from proof of concepts has probably tapered off a little bit. Maybe it'll come back. So I would say for all filmmakers out there to be a little bit just aware of that just because you make a proof of concept may not mean that it's going to get acquired. So just keeping that in mind.
So what is your favorite genre and why?
I love all genre. I think it's hard for me to pin down, because I have an idea for a romantic comedy. I have an idea for a Hallmark Christmas movie. Like I feel like I have, like, once you like get into story, you can either kind of focus on your genre and really build that out, which some people do and they're amazing at it. But I kind of tend to be a little bit more eclectic. However, I love psychological thrillers, and I don't think I'll ever leave that, because it's just become such an amazing conglomeration of everything that I love, which is intense character kind of arcs that are, you can have someone being like laughing in one moment and then screaming and running for their lives in the other moment, and then wondering if things aren't real and seeing things. And it's incredibly visceral section of the horror genre that allows you to play so much with reality, and like it's kind of almost fantastical in that way, right? Like you get to kind of reinvent the wheel in terms of you could have a unicorn in the room with the character, and that could work in a psychological thriller because if you set it up right, it means something, right? It's just such a fun space that is also so grounded in like the root of human emotions, which is like fear and wondering what's real and trying to reconcile that with what you're experiencing.
So
who's your favorite genre? Wait, you have to tell me that.
Okay, so my favorite genre, it's tough. There's so many. I definitely love mystery because like it's just like so many questions you can ask, like, oh, who did this and who did that? It's like, oh, like I love that kind of like horror, also action.
Yes, so you're a jack of all trades too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I like mysteries like the most. Like I definitely like I am working on a mystery story right now, like a mirror horror story right now. So
amazing
film concept. So yeah.
Oh, that's gonna be so cool. I'm assuming you watched Knives Out then, which isn't really horror necessarily, but wow, what a great one.
I love Knives Out. I mean,
me too. So fun. So very
fun. So who inspired you as a filmmaker?
Wow. That's like asking what's your favorite movie and you're just like, I don't know. Help. I think there's so many that I could say within the genre, but I think what I come back to is I'm going to come back to Peter Jackson. And the reason why is because when I saw Lord of the Rings, I realized what cinema was. I hadn't really like as a kid, I was just kind of like, cool, movies for entertainment, fun, yay. But when you see that level of like precision in terms of storytelling, and not only that, but like adapting from a behemoth of a book. Like I've read the book, it is no easy feat to adapt that, and they did it so well in those 3 movies. And then not only that, but like crafted every section of that world, and then also had emotional character arcs on top of that, and a lasting thing that holds up now, which is not always true for films that have any level of VFX from that era. Like it's very hard to have those films hold up today, and they do. And his approach was just such a labor of love, and you see that too with his documentaries that have been coming out. So I saw They Shall Not Grow Old a couple years ago, which is his World War I documentary, where he took all the footage that had been like hand cranked on the field of World War I. And I believe this came from his love of his grandfather, who also was in the war. And they hand by eye like made it to 24 frames per second. They added color, they added sound, because obviously that film didn't have sound to it. So they built the entire soundscape so that you could feel like you were there with these people who were like 18 years old, 16 years old, going to war. And it's just like such a beautiful, just like tribute. It's almost like an experimental film, but it's documentary and it's just purely human. And I haven't seen the Beatles documentaries yet, which are coming out on Disney. They're on Disney Plus now, I think.
Oh yeah, I've been to watch that.
Yes, I've heard they're incredible. And I think even though documentary is obviously very different than narrative filmmaking, like he just has like when he takes something into himself and like goes, this is the story that I want to tell, he does it with such honesty and just like kind of like this reverence of like, I'm going to carry this story of these other people from these other people that everyone loves, and I'm going to give it a new voice and try to present it in the most human, beautiful way that I can. And I very much respect that.
No, definitely. I do love his work too, so definitely.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite a filmmaker that inspires you?
Ooh, I say honestly, all-time hero is Steven Spielberg. Honestly, like
yes, the man, the myth, the legend.
It opened my eyes. So I'm like, I want to do that, but I didn't know what that was. And then I'm like, oh, I want to direct, and yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, he's great. I recently got to visit the Academy Museum in LA. I hadn't been before, and we walk in, and they have a reoccurring story exhibit that just like it talks about how story evolves over the course of the different floors of the museum. And we walked into the middle section of that, and there in display is the original like Rosebud sleigh from Citizen Kane. Which I don't know if you've seen it, but obviously it's a behemoth of cinema, or what Citizen Kane, whether you like it or not, like it's a big deal. And they had it there, and the plaque read that like, the only reason this survived, because they only made 3, was because they liked the first 2 takes. Like Orson Welles was like, after take 2 was like, yeah, don't throw it in the furnace, like it's good. So that's the only reason that we have a sleigh from that, or sleigh, whatever it's called, from that movie. Otherwise, if he hadn't liked the second take, we wouldn't have one. And it's sitting there, and you're looking at it, and you're like, it's right there. And then you look at the bottom of the the plaque and it says like from Steven Spielberg's like personal collection, and you're like, of course he has this, like the man of cinema, of course he has the sled from the movie.
I
Oh,
know, right?
it was cool. It was a weird feeling.
Well, so I'm definitely looking forward to the West Side Story that he has come out. So that looks
Yes.
really good.
Yes. What a bold choice to remake that. Like he's
I know.
continually proving that he's so talented in so many ways.
Now, question: favorite movie or TV show?
This is just mean. This is just very mean.
Good question.
Oh no. Okay. Favorite film or TV show?
Tough. It's tough.
It is tough. I probably will have to say my usual. Okay, so I'll say film and TV, and they're different, but they're kind of my classic answers because there's too many to choose, right? So these are my
Oh man.
these are my classic go-to answers, and I would say for film, it's Apollo 13, and the reason why, I know it's like kind of a strange answer. Everyone's like Jurassic Park, Star Wars, or whatever, which are great answers because they're amazing films. But I saw Apollo 13 also about the time I saw Lord of the Rings, so I was like ready to start eating up cinema. I think The Matrix came shortly after that, and Indiana Jones. Like that was like my golden age of like realizing what movies were. It was incredible. But I saw Apollo 13 and was like, I immediately fell in love with space. And I realized that you could teach an audience everything they needed to know about something as complex as rocket science to get them to understand the stakes and also feel it emotionally, which is tough to do, right? Because normally when you're trying to like info dump on an audience, they're like, okay, we're bored. Like, stop talking to us about rockets and why they can't get back. We don't care. Like, get to the good stuff. Like, no. But the way that they had done it was so human, so that the whole movie, you're like on the edge of your seat. I looked at the back of the DVD at the time, and it said it was rated PG-13 for emotional intensity. Basically, that's what it was rated for. And it's true, right? Like, it's just, it constantly builds, and you're with these three guys the whole way, and it's incredibly moving in terms of an interpretation of a true story. And obviously Tom Hanks is a god. He's incredible. So I think that's one of my favorites, just because it's so moving and it holds up, and I love space, so I won't apologize for that. I think my favorite TV show would it's tied. Okay, it's tied between the original Star Trek, like Leonard Nimoy, William Shatner level of original Star Trek. And although it has some problems, I think what I really respect about that is what an innovation it was in terms of TV at the time. Like Gene Roddenberry, the show creator, had such a vision for like having equality on TV and for not making something that was like, at the time, a lot of what was on TV was Westerns, and it was like Stick 'em Up and like Adventure of the Week and all of that stuff. And he's like, I want to do that, but I want to talk about things that are philosophical and relevant to like humanity. And I want to do it with aliens in space. And we're going to do it. It's going to be great. And even though the show was canceled after like 3 seasons, like, obviously you've seen how many iterations of it that have happened. Like it's influenced so many people and touched so many lives. That's really incredible. And on the flip side of that, I love the Twilight Zone, the original Twilight Zone.
Oh yeah.
It's eerie and spooky, and just like they're slow burns, right? Like some of them are like really like you're sitting there going, what is this mystery going to be? And they're just so great and fun. How about you?
I would say, for a movie, honestly, I would say The Raiders of the Lost Ark, because that movie spoke to me as a filmmaker.
Just
like
such
that,
a good one.
No, I love that one, honestly. I would say also for TV show, I would say
there's so many these days.
I know there's so many of them out there. I would say definitely the Twilight Zone. I do love that, honestly.
You have to start playing titles in your brain. You have to like go down the list, and then you keep going, and you realize the list never ends. You're like, oh no.
I would say I think it's like Mad is Midnight Mass. It's kind of like a horror.
I loved Midnight Mass.
I haven't seen it, but that is on my list, honestly.
Oh my gosh. You'll have to tell me what you think.
No, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, it's so fun. And it's got that kind of like philosophical element and the mystery element and all the things we've been talking about that we really love. And it has all of it. I've been kind of trying to go on a Mike Flanagan walkabout recently and like watch back through his stuff that I haven't seen. And I I
Yeah.
watched Gerald's game the other day and was like, this is incredible.
Mhm.
I think next I have Oculus on my list, and hopefully that one doesn't disappoint, because it's all been great so far. He's really cool.
Oh, yeah, I really love his work. So I mean, I really do. I mean, he's produced a lot of stuff. So I mean, I love it.
Yes, Mike Flanagan, if you're listening, we will bring you coffee.
We'll bring you coffee. We'll bring you.
Yes, let us learn from you.
Let's learn. So I have two more questions, and then I'll wrap up. Do you have anything that's come up that you're allowed to talk about?
Yes. Okay. So I have so many things coming up. And so many things I want to have coming up. You know, when you have that list of projects
Oh
that you're
yeah.
like, I need to work on these. I need time. I have a list miles long about that. But tangibly speaking, coming up quickly anyway. Today I'm actually doing the final export for The Little Things, which is that comedy that I mentioned that I am finishing up. So it should be going to producers for a final QC today. Yay! Hooray! Fingers crossed. And then that will go off to some festivals, and I'm sure probably end up online as well. So that's exciting. And then I have another horror short that I made pre-pandemic that I think I'm just going to release. It was a proof of concept for a feature script that I've written, and I'm kind of coming to the point where I'm like, I just want to share this with the world. Like, everyone who has seen my stuff so far has been pretty positive overall, and I've just really had a lot of fun talking to like-minded horror makers who are like yourself, who are like, this is awesome, like I want to see more like this. And I'm like, it's been really encouraging to me, because for a long time I just like let those sit on my hard drive, and I was like, this is silly. Film is meant to be shared, and so we can learn from each other and grow. And yeah, so that one's called The Bleeding, and I'm thinking about releasing it in January.
Oh, okay. Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so those are the two that are like ready to go, and then I have a short that I have written and will hopefully be shooting early next year.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you? Tell me about what's new for you? What's film is coming up? Sorry,
So
this is turning into a double interview where I also interview you for your podcast.
well, you're gonna like the last question. I'll just tell you that. Well, so first, like, I'm trying to come up with a couple like short films. I have like one that's gonna be like a proof concept kind of way. That's like the like horror history,
Amazing.
which I'm gonna have hopefully come out with a feature, because it's gonna explain more about the thing, which I can't
Yes.
really say. But
Please
yeah,
send it to me when you're done, because I'm very excited about this.
no, yeah, no, definitely. I will definitely shoot it to you right away. I mean, like, I just been working on like work. I'm planning to do something with Lost House eventually, with trying to make it to like kind of like an episode kind of feel, trying to like, explain more everything about Lost House. Cause I mean, my film Lost House kind of like like solve like, like unanswered, like a lot of things.
Yes, 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 yes. Oh, you're building a franchise then. You're just
Yeah.
gonna like keep shooting out and building, and it'll be the next Conjuring. That'd be great.
But yeah, so yeah, just come out with a couple of short films. Hopefully, come out with an episode thing, and then yeah, hopefully come out with my first feature. I mean, that's my end goal right there. So I mean,
Yes, same. That's the tricky part, isn't it? It's like, okay, we have to prove we can make a feature, so we're gonna make a feature.
yeah,
Now, how do we do it? I'm in that same boat too. It's a big mountain to climb, but I believe we can do it.
no, yeah, definitely, and that's why I have like a couple like proof concepts to come out, even if like they don't get pick up, just having them release online and see how well they do. So I mean, yeah,
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe someone will see it, and then like they'll want to work with you as a producer or whatever. Like, it's always good to share, because
oh
you
yeah,
can make
definitely.
connections.
Come knock on the door, be like, hey, you.
Yeah. They may like what I'm realizing is they don't always show up as like magical fairy godmothers who are like, here you go, let me sign a check to you
Definitely
so
gotta
you
work
can go
for
forth and
it.
make your dream. But they do usually come as like people like yourself, or I've had some amazing composers like reach out to me and be like, hey, like I loved your stuff, like I would love to work with you on the next thing. And so
Yeah,
it only like adds to the people you get to work with and learn, and that makes the work better. So I think, yeah, definitely sharing is the answer.
no, definitely. So this is the very last question. So it's kind of a twist. It's going to turn into, I guess, your interview for me. So any questions you want to know about me?
Ooh, okay. Now I have to think of a really good one. If there's any film that you could remake yourself, and I feel like this is an interesting question, because it has to be a film that maybe you think is really good but wasn't quite living up to its potential, that you could either write or direct. Which would it be?
Ooh, that is a really good question. I'll lie. That is a really good
It's a
question.
hard one.
It's a hard one too.
Yeah.
Ooh, ooh.
Oh, now I have to think if I have an answer for this. I don't know if I do. And now I've stumped us both.
We're both.
Yeah, huh. If we can't come up with a good answer, then I can ask a different question too. If
No,
we're like stumped beyond recognition.
you know what? I could say so. This is Netflix movie thing. Is like someone in your house, or maybe it's like someone broke in the house, like kind of like a horror kind of thing. I would say I would kind of like redo that because like I feel like there was some points of the the scares that were missed in that,
For
like
sure.
or like jump scares. So I feel like I could improve a little bit more scary because I didn't find that scary not to lie. So like if it was like supposed to be scary horror, I'm like nah. I'm like I could predict like but like oh here comes a jump scare like oh like you know what I mean.
Yeah, no,
Like, I
I
would have done
totally
the
get
opposite, like where I just like predicted the like the jump scare. I would have done the opposite and try to trick them, be like, oh, it's not gonna happen here. It's gonna happen.
I love that. Those reversals always get me, and I'm always like, "Oh, you outsmarted me!" And I love it when a
You
filmmaker
have
can
tricked
outsmart
me.
you. So, yeah, good stuff. No, I think that's a really good example. Yeah, and it's fun to think about how, because obviously no one sets out to make a bad movie, right? Like there's
Yeah.
no filmmaker being like, haha, let me make this terrible movie for you. Like even if it is terrible, usually that's like the conceit of it, right? Like that's the point, is that
Yeah.
it's supposed to be like satirical or kind of comedic in that way. But I think what's great about seeing movies that maybe could have lived up to better potential is that like we get to think about it as filmmakers and be like, okay, if I had been in that situation, what might I have done differently? Like, and some of that obviously you can't control because you have a million collaborators and you're limited on budget and location or whatever. But I find it really interesting to think about those things and be like, okay, how would I have solved this problem that I'm experiencing as a viewer?
Oh, yeah.
If I had been in the filmmaker's chair. And who knows, maybe we would, maybe we wouldn't, but it's good to think about.
So what about you?
I think for me, also a Netflix film that I kind of wanted to live up to a little bit higher expectations was Hypnotic.
Yeah, I know that.
That also recently came out, and I really like when the trailer came out. I was like, "Ooh, this is interesting. This is kind of like playing with reality, and like hypnosis is really interesting to me." Found myself a little bit disappointed by some of the tropes that were followed, which may have been the filmmaker's intention. Maybe they were kind of going for like a Silence of the Lambs remake with hypnosis, and that was kind of what their vision was. But I think I was wanting to dive a little deeper into like the nature of hypnosis and how it works, and
Ooh, okay.
make it a little bit more Invisible Man-y, which I loved Invisible Man. So I think that would have been my
love Invisible Man.
Oh, so good.
I also
So
recently
good.
watched is it like the Night House? It's pretty much like it's pretty cool. It's like the Visible Man, but it's like pretty much like well, her husband died. It's kind of like the kind of close to the same story, but it's kind of like a different approach to it. It's kind of like horror, like psychiatric kind of thing. So
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty cool. Not lie.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it's really
Awesome.
cool. I mean, I saw it in theaters, so it was really good. So that's it for the Ferra Film Podcast. I'll just say thank you, Catherine, for coming on and jumping onto the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
I've been